Welcome back to Moko Plays Satisfactory. First up, if I sound a little bit croaky today, that's because I've got a bit of that there man flu going on. But we shall persevere and power on and press on with progress in our factory here. Little bit of progress off stream. I threw some foundations down around this area where our hub is. And you may also notice that we've refactored what's going on with fuel production here. So previously we had this storing leaves, taking those into a container, into a constructor to make biomass, feeding into a third constructor to make solid biofuel. I've added the same process here for wood from this side into another constructor. Those two are then merging in the middle there and all feeding into one constructor. And then all of our solid biofuel is being stored over here so that we've always got a steady and reliable source of it. I think I might have added another biomass generator or two here. We're now up to 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus the 2 that are connected to the hub. So we're looking pretty healthy from the power point of view, with a capacity of 250 megawatts right now. And also off stream I went around and gathered a lot of leaves and wood to which are now making their way through this production. Last episode we unlocked the tier 2 belts, which we used in a few places to speed things up, and we set out to refactor this area here, which was our basic starter iron and copper production. We've got the iron up and running over on this platform here, stretching out across the deep chasm, so we're producing plates, rods and screws, and feeding them back into storage containers in the kind of main base area, so that's nice and convenient for us. We are still limited in some cases by having the Mark II belts, so I think we're producing more screws than these can vary around, but pretty soon we're going to look to split those off and feed those into some more advanced machinery. So it's nothing too big to worry about. What we didn't tackle last time was the copper, so that's what I'm about to do right now. I'm going to basically replicate this same setup that we've got for iron here, with a platform with some smelters at the back, and then a row of constructors in front of that, and then a second row of constructors to do this two-stage construction, which for copper is the cables. And I'm going to do that over here next to where the miner is. So I'm going to run through that now. I'll pause the stream and then we'll come back and be ready to start to make use of those extra resources that we're producing to unlock more milestones and more long-term progress. Alright, here we are with our copper production set up then. So from our main base we're down still using that same pure copper node that we were using earlier. So that's a Mark I miner generating 120 copper ore. Going to run that on a Mark II belt down to this line here, feeding these 4 smelters. They're taking 30 ore in and generating 30 ingots each. And we're running that back down this main line here to then split out across our 8 constructors. These 8 constructors are going to take 15 of that ore each, of those ingots each, excuse me, and they're going to generate copper wire. That's a 1:2 ratio. It's 15 ingots per minute in each, and they're going to generate 30 wire per minute each. So that's too many to run on like a main line of output like this. So instead we're splitting directly 6 of the wire constructors are going to go into a cable constructor here, so these 2 feed into that one, these 2 into that one, and these 2 into that one. And then the remaining 2 are just going to generate out and run down this line here to our storage. So we've got copper wire running down this line, cables running down this line, and they're both feeding into some extra storage containers that is set up over near to where our iron storage is. That should be all up and ready to run. So all I need to do is connect up the power to get that going. So there's the grid. Let's just hook that up to here. Okay, so 120 ore per minute feeding into these 4 smelters, generating our 120 ingots. Running down, splitting these down this manifold pattern. Now, I can't remember if we talked about this or not. What this is going to try and do is it's going to try and take this 120 and split it equally. So send 60 down the line here and send 60 into this machine here. This machine's going to... Oh, that's interesting. Okay. This machine would quite quickly fill up. This would reach 100. It would reach saturation, at which point it would then just start to split more down the line. So then this one will fill up, and then this one will fill up, and so on and so forth. So you don't need to worry about balancing the load on a machine by machine, input by input basis. The only downside of doing it like this is it takes some time for the machines at the end of the row to start to receive enough of the raw input to have their throughput. But with this few machines, we're talking a matter of minutes here before this one gets filled, and so on. So it works just fine to run it down this kind of manifold design, so long as you're okay to wait a little bit for it to become truly productive. That said, we're not producing anything right now because we have overloaded our power. So we were... right, okay. That's saying we only had a capacity of 40, which I think means we've actually got 2 power grids set up. These ones must just be hooked into the 2 generators that we've got in the hub, because as we checked before, we should be generating 250, I think. And you can see our iron factory is still online over there. So that just means that I've missed a connection somewhere. The other thing I did in the meanwhile, by the way, was to get rid of our basic iron and copper production over here. So everything we'll do going forward will be along these sorts of lines, hopefully with much less spaghetti than we had previously. Okay, that's the grid that's still online. This is going to be our separate grid. Yeah, so all we really need to do is to hook those 2 up. That was a bit of an oversight. And that should be back up and running. You guys should be generating again. We have in total 250 capacity, max consumption 208, and our actual consumption is fluctuating up and down a bit here. So I think we're all good. Let's go and have a look at that copper to see how it's doing. I see green lights, that's a good sign. In normal production you'll see the lights flicker from green to yellow a little bit. Yellow means it's like either waiting for an input or currently its output but is full or something like that. But it means it is generally good. Green means it's actively working. So yeah, we have cables coming out here, we have wire coming out here. So we've got our 2 constructors giving us 30 each, so we've got 60 wire being output. The ratio for the cables runs back down, and this is a 2-to-1, so we could do raw copper ingots 1-to-2, as in 15 ingots gives us 30 wire. Take that 30 wire, combine it with the output of another constructor, gives us 60 wire, and then that gets consumed by one of these constructors and we go back down to 30 cable. It's a slightly interesting ratio, but ultimately it just means that we want to dedicate a little bit more of our construction to cable than to wire to be confident of getting roughly similar outputs. If we needed truly 50-50, we could find a way to do that. But as it stands, we're going to be getting 30, 60, 90 cables per minute, plus our 60 wire from these 2 machines, and I'm happy with that. These are running down these belts into our storage, and I think we're all good here. So that's a smaller and simpler setup than our basic iron production over there is, and the reason for that is chiefly that we've got 2 pure iron nodes feeding into our iron construction, whereas we only have the single pure copper node here. There is actually another pure copper node just up on top of this rise here. I think that's a pure node as well, so when we do want more copper, which probably won't be right now, but will probably be when we get to the next stage of copper production, including copper sheets, then we can just tap into that node, expand out this setup either that way or that way, and use a similar sort of flow there. But we're good for the time being anyway. We've got wire, we've got cables, and that's all coming down here. This is the additional storage that I set up off stream. So I doubled up with the iron plates storage because we already had a storage bin from our basic setup over here that was like kind of half full. I haven't connected those two together. I don't think I really care to do anything overly complex with this stuff right now. One neat thing that I did find out is I'd seen various solutions for this. Before you unlock signs in the game, you kind of want a way to designate, to show which container's storing which material. I've seen people do things like, you know, leave little partial belts out the front and stuff for a visual indicator, which works. One thing I did find out though is if you are hovering over the storage container like this, and then you drop something down onto the floor outside of your inventory, it actually drops directly onto this position on the top here. So that's quite a handy indicator in the absence of any signage, I think. So I would say in terms of our to-do and our goals then, we have now refactored that basic iron and copper. We can look at building the MAM and starting the tech trees, and also progressing further up the milestones. Just before we get to that, I think one thing we do want to do, if we have any reinforced iron plates, is to upgrade this belt, because if I remember rightly, somewhere in this concrete production here we are throttled by belt speed. That's outputting 120 per minute onto a Mark 1 belt, so we're throttled here, so let's upgrade that. That will take our 120, split it 40, 40 and 40, so those are fine to be on Mark 1 belts. These want 45 per minute, but they're not going to quite get it, but that's okay. And then, what are we doing, 15 per minute across 3 machines, so actually everything else is fine to be on a Mark 1 belt here. 15, 30, 45 out of 60 in use here. We're getting slightly less than that because we're slightly underfeeding the machines. Alright, so we've got our milestone there for part assembly, which we need 200 cables, 200 rods, 500 screws and 300 plates. Which we have, and we do not have the screws, so let's grab some of those. Grab a few stacks. Now let's go and unlock. We're in quite a good place for having a starter base that now is relatively segmented, generating a reasonable amount of resource for our current needs, isn't crazy on the power front. We don't have to go hunting for any extra materials to generate power for a little while, although we have ran through our stock of leaves. If there was any concern about biofuel, we could always set the second constructor up to do wood into biomass as well, but for the time being I'm happy to just leave that to take down. Alright, let's go.
Milestone reached. More complex assembly of parts can now be automated. Project assembly parts can now be constructed and sent up via the space elevator. Note: project parts are too complex to produce by hand.
Okay, so that's giving us more complex assembly, which in practice means this new assembler building. So everything we've done so far has been one input, one output. Miners output go into smelters, which take an input, generate one output, go into constructors, which take an input, generate one output. The most complex thing we've done is chain multiple constructors one after the other to produce parts like screws. The assembler is a 2-in, 1-out machine, which I can't afford right now. But here's how it looks. So we've got our 2 lines for input, our 1 line for output, and that lets us generate automatically parts like the reinforced iron plates, which until now we've been handcrafting. If we feed in plates and screws, we can get reinforced iron plates, which are useful for building other machines and useful for building our Mark II belts. So actually we're going to need quite a lot of these for this stage of the game. Got other things here like rotors and modular frames, which we haven't looked at all just yet. So we absolutely do want to get up and running with that stuff. Another thing that we want to consider is alternate recipes. So until now we've been working with only the basic recipes. So for example, if we look at screws, right now we need to take our iron ore, smelt that into ingots, turn the ingots into rods, and then turn the rods into screws. Somewhere out there in the world I know is a recipe that lets us bypass this stage and just take iron ingots and turn them straight into screws. And that might be something that's useful for us to consider as we expand our iron production into the next stage to look at automating things like reinforced iron plates. One other thing we should think about is the MAM. That'll let us start running down tech trees for things like Caterium and Quartz, which will give us some quality of life stuff that'll make life easier. Or things like Quartz lets us do signs to organise our factory better, or Caterium lets us unlock some mobility items to get around the world faster. So that part's now launched. Let's have a look. Jump pads might help us get around if we had a lot of verticality in the factory, which we don't right now, and it needs a lot of rotors, which we haven't automated yet. The resource sync program would be a pretty useful thing to have. That'll let us take any excess that we're producing and start to get something tangible for it. It lets you unlock optional upgrades, for want of a better way of describing them, in the Awesome Sync and the Awesome Shop. Everything else in tier 1 and 2 we've unlocked, which means we must have access to the MAM already. So let's call this our next objective to unlock in terms of milestones. We've got nearly everything we need already anyway, we just need to wait for the pod to come back. Meantime, let's have a look at the MAM, because I didn't realise that we had unlocked that. So this is the MAM, and these are the things that we can research. So we'll find things out in the world, feed them into this machine, and this will unlock technology based on those. Right now everything's greyed out because we've not found anything to work with. However, I do know where at least one of these things is. What we need for it, if I remember rightly, are a couple of modular frames. So let's just craft those by hand. So in terms of things out in the world, there are crash sites, which we're going to go and look at now, and there are other resources like sulfur and Caterium. Once you've found the first of those, it unlocks the ability to research that in the MAM. So that's something that we're going to want to get started doing, both so that we can start to have options with alternate recipes, and because there's a time tax on some of that stuff. Some of it takes a while to research, so we can have stuff researching while we're doing other stuff in our base. That I'm sure is more than enough. So yeah, while I was out clearing some of this vegetation and getting leaves and wood to turn into fuel, I did run into this area over here, where we've had some kind of fix-it. Attempted landing has gone horribly wrong in the past. But good for us, it's left a few resources lying around. We're going to grab. And it's also, every one of these pods has a drop pod here. This has within it something that we want. So in this case, there's always a cost to getting into it. So in this case, it's wanting us to provide one modular frame, which I didn't have on me when I found it. So come back now. We open that, we'll gain access to the hard drive of this drop pod. And by researching hard drives, we'll get access to alternate recipes.
And can be repurposed to unlock an alternate recipe. Salvaging more hard drives will provide additional alternate recipes.
So coming into the MAM here, scanning the hard drive. That takes 10 minutes to scan, and then it's going to give us a choice of 3 options of alternate recipe. The reason why we want to get a head start on this and start thinking about it now is because the alternate recipes are tied to technology you already have unlocked. So right now, here's all of the parts that we have potential to make. The more we tech up and go through the milestones, the longer this list gets. And what that means is the pool of alternate recipes grows wider and wider the more stuff that you've got unlocked. What I really want right now is some alternate screw recipes and some alternate reinforced iron plate recipes. And so if we research right now, we've got a better chance of running into those without needing to get tons and tons of hard drives. Something else I just spotted over here, somewhere in this direction, that I'm now not seeing. There it is a power slug. So again, these are things that you run into as you are exploring the world. They're oftentimes in slightly difficult to reach places, and they're oftentimes guarded as well. At least if we weren't in passive mode, these guys would be being a problem right now. But as it is, they're just going to chill, and so are we. So we just need a means to get up to that. Probably we can just build a ramp up.
This semi-slug seems to emit unfamiliar energy readings which could potentially be retrofitted into fix-it technology. A new research tree can now be accessed in the MAM.
Cool, we can't research that right now because our MAM is busy looking at that hard drive. However, we can also pick up this sulfur while we're here. And again, Ada's going to tell us.
This is a mix of sulfide and sulfate minerals. It could be an indication of recent volcanic activity. A new research tree exploring volatile self-defense applications can now be accessed in the MAM.
Well, that's another tree, and if I remember rightly, somewhere down here I saw something else. Quartz or Catarium or something along those lines. And the question is, where did I see it? Not down there, because that's off the edge of a cliff. We'll give it a couple of minutes. If we can't find it, then I'm sure we'll always run into it later on.
Your contract legally compels you to harvest this artifact.
That voice was from a Mercer or one of those. There's some items in the game where it's in early access that still don't do anything active. Probably up at the top there. They give a kind of sound cue like that to get your attention. I wasn't looking for this, but this is coal. So let's grab some of this. We are definitely gonna need some of this handy. Coal is going to be an extremely important resource for us as we get out of the early game and into the middle of the game, because it's going to be our key power source. It's going to be our first self-sustaining power source once we move away from biofuel. Just going to grab some right now so we've got some. I can't remember if there is MAM research tied to it or not, but we'll need small amounts of coal to do things in the sulfur tree, I think. Let's just grab a few more. Oh, my inventory is in fact full. Let's get rid of some stuff that we don't need. And let's head back to the hub. I can't remember what else I did see around here. I definitely get the feeling there was some quartz or Catarium, which would be nice to get a start on those tech trees, but not essential right now. Oh, here's some quartz right here.
This mineral shows purity levels akin to synthetic quartz manufactured on Earth and can be used to improve communication and exploration technologies. A new research tree can now be accessed in the MAM.
And it's our lucky day because here's Catarium. We're only finding this stuff in small amounts right now, but the good thing is...
Technologies can be developed based on this new superconductive gold-like element.
But the good thing is once you've got it once, and started the MAM tree for it, it unlocks as a scannable in here, so we can always find more of it really easily. Now let's head back to base, let's unlock that resource sink, and then let's have a think about what we want to do next. Oh, I didn't mean to come this way. Oh. One thing I do tend to do as well, which I forgot to, is these things are all over the world. There's like probably 100 or more of them. So it's my tendency to drop a lookout tower down next to the ones that I have looted, just so that I know when you see something orange off in the distance as one of these, I know that we don't need to bother with it anymore because we've already got everything we need from it. Let's expand this out slightly so that we've got a bit more space to chuck down some extra buildables, including the MAM. Power pole clipping's going to annoy me, so let's just replace that. Doing this with the ramps isn't necessary, by the way. It's just like an aesthetic choice, and it makes for a slightly easier life if you happen to be on a slightly low piece of ground than having to jump up every time. Right, let's get a MAM down here. Like the craft benches and that sort of thing, we can always drop an extra MAM out in the field when we want to, but we're going to be looking at them relatively regularly, so there's no harm in having a more permanent one down here. For the resource sink program, we need, I think, a little bit more concrete, and I think we're good for everything else. Wood in here, leaves in here. Metals in here, everything else we're going to use relatively soon, I think. Let's grab some extra concrete and go and unlock that next tier, and then we'll have a think about assemblers and automate the next stages of construction.
Milestone reached. You have been given early access to the Anti-Waste Effort for Stress Testing of Materials on Exoplanets bonus program. Funneling parts into the awesome resource sink, depending on their amount and complexity, will grant you coupons in the awesome store, which can be exchanged for bonus rewards. Examples of bonus content are parts, walls, factory attachments, and cosmetics. Fixit is working hard to develop additional options, which will be added to the awesome store in the future. Go that extra kilometer. Go awesome.
Okay, so we just unlocked the awesome shop and the awesome sink. The shop's no use to us right now until we've got some tickets, but let's drop one down anyway, so we've got one. The awesome sink we want to put next to production lines where we're overproducing. So actually I think it might be worth us segmenting off some of our screws just temporarily, because this belt's limited to moving 120 screws. We've actually filled our storage there already. As we steal the odd box of screws, it's going to get filled back up but not from the likes of these, because generating 40 per minute per machine, so we got what? 40, 80, 120. Let's just let the game do the maths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 constructors. There's 40, 240. We've got 2 full belts worth there, which I don't really want to deal with running 2 lines back just into storage and stuff. So let's merger. Yes, let's, instead of running you down the main line, just have you guys running all of the time. And we'll run into a temporary awesome sink until we have a need to make use of these screws. So yeah, everything they're generating is going into the sink here now. And you can see as we add points, it gives us the coupons. The coupons are what we will use as our fix-it fun bucks to buy things in the shop, which are mostly aesthetic improvements, but some functional things that are going to help us out as well. We can just leave this running. While we're doing other things, we're going to be generating points here, which is a good use of these screws, given that we don't have anything else that needs them right now. Our MAM is done researching that hard drive. So it's given us a choice of these 3 recipes here. Of these, I feel like the alternate iron wire is the only one I'm really likely to use. Let's grab that. Now also in the MAM we've got these extra things here because we've got some Caterium, a power slug and quartz and so on and so forth. Caterium we could start to research, that'll run through very quickly. And it gives us the rest of the tree, so we now...
New resource added to the resource scanner.
Can create Caterium ingots, and we can also...
Research available in the MAM.
Yeah. We can also now scan for Caterium if any of those things in that tree look exciting enough that we want to go down that direction. Which, once we've gone Caterium ingots into Quickwire, we'll get zip lines, which we may use, and then some other stuff that we can't see right now.
New recipe unlocked.
So this is quite an exciting path to go down. If we get some more of these power slugs and turn them into power shards, we're going to unlock under and overclocking. That'll be incredibly useful where we've only got a limited amount of raw natural resource to work with. Like for example, if we had really heavy copper needs, but we've only got those 2 copper nodes over there anywhere nearby to work with, one thing we could do would be overclock some of the miners and the machines that we have working in that area. Super useful, gives us a ton of flexibility, and we're going to use a lot of that as we play through the game. With quartz... yeah, this is the one that I was thinking of. With quartz we can now make quartz crystals and silica. Both of those come from raw quartz, and if we go down the silica tree here we'll get these blade runners, which are going to help run and jump around the world much faster. So I really want to get those as soon as possible. So I think we should consider that something to put on our to-do list. We have in fact done those things, so let's get this in as unlock quartz tree in MAM for blade runners. And the other thing we should be thinking about next time is automate more complex iron production in assemblers. Let's take a quick look at the MAM and see if there's anything else here. Sulfur we haven't looked at. The sulfur gives us things like black powder, which takes us down an explosive tree. It can be useful in combat, which we don't really care about. It can also clear some obstacles from the world, which we might want to get back to. Not a priority for us, though. The expanded tool belt for an extra hand slot is a nice to have, but we are nowhere near ready to start funneling these encased beams that it needs, so we're just going to let this tree sit for a while. What I do want to do is go searching and grab some more hard drives, so that we can unlock some more alternate recipes before we get into the extra, the more complex production. So let's add that to the to-do list as well. That's one that I'll do off stream because it means a lot of running around the place looking for those crash sites. So that's something that I can do in downtime. So find hard drives for alternate recipes, screws, and reinforced plates. And let's mark that not done. So that gives us some nice short-term goals, and we know what our long-term goals are there. We're working towards tier 4 for blueprints and coal power. We can't get tiers 3 and 4 yet. The only thing that's left to unlock here is jump pads. What's standing in our way of getting to tier 3 and tier 4 is the space elevator, so that's something that we need to start thinking about as well. That's going to do us for now. Good incremental progress today. Next episode we'll look for more complex automation, and I'll try and get some alternate recipes to play with as well. As always, thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next episode of Satisfactory. Cheers.